I mean, it's not like people are gonna be like, "I want to hear the bass,
Right,
and
right.
the highs and the lows." It's people talking.
Hey, Kyle Martin, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Well, welcome to the Popcorn Space, episode 22, which is a pretty special
Awesome.
episode considering that episode 21 was like 6 months ago. So
Yeah.
you're part of the revival.
How old are you?
How old am I? I am
Uh-huh.
almost 21. I'm like a
Oh,
little.
okay.
I'm like a little kid who says like 3.5 quarters.
I thought you maybe were like 22, so I thought you were gonna say it was special because you are 22.
No,
years
it's
old.
not. Well, I appreciate you thinking that. I get a lot of because I look, in my opinion, I look 1,000 years old, which is it's really awkward for like dating situations. That's the worst part because for girls that are my age, I look super old and like I'm this weird older guy trying to hit on them. And then for girls that I look like the age of, it starts working out, and then they find out how old I am, and I'm actually like a little child, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know that I want to be with somebody who like can't go to bars yet." I'm like, "I'm almost there."
Or can't go to bars, or now you can't even smoke. I think they took that away from the 18
No, I can't. Yes, I used to smoke cigars and everything all the time. Not all the time, but I haven't at all
Yeah.
since the pandemic. But I used to every now and again go and grab cigars, and I would smoke with some people, and they grandfathered everybody in who had turned 18 after for a minute. But then in January they switched it back. So one day I just showed up and was like, "Hey, I wanted to get this cigar," and they checked my ID, and I confidently pull out my ID, and then they like thought that I was trying to steal it, or not steal it. They thought I was trying to pull one over on them, and I'm like, "No, I'm showing you my ID. I didn't know." Like, you can't do that. You got to get out of here. I was like, as of when?
Wait, so they basically were like, "Hey, all you people who are addicted to tobacco and nicotine now, sorry."
Yeah, they're just doing a little cold turkey experiment for us to see how well it goes, I think.
So what? So we were talking a little bit yesterday, or this. When was that we were talking yesterday?
I think we were talking about your Oh Corona musical. That might have been what we were
Oh
talking about.
yeah, yeah.
So you started
Yeah,
working on a parody musical?
Yeah, well, got a lot of time at home, and I'm the kind of person that I've got a lot of creative energy, and I've got to get it out some way or another. And so I found this out when I was my first year living here in Abilene. I did not teach theater, and I discovered that I gotta really be doing something. So I did a lot of writing at that time. I did community theater and stuff like that. Played a lot of guitar.
What mainly
Now
stuff did you write? Like what? Like did you write plays or?
plays, yeah, plays. But
Drink.
but so now that I haven't been going to school and not directing, not doing anything there, I found my creative, like some of the stuff that I wish I had more time to do. Or I wish I have time to do it, but I just don't have the energy to do it, like sit down and write.
Right.
I'm doing a lot more of it lately, and I think what kicked it off was just this idea that I had to take, because we just did the musical Oklahoma, and I thought the song Can't Say No, I'm just a girl who can't say no. I thought that would just work really well as I'm just a girl who can't stay home.
It's a pretty good parody, I think.
Yeah. And then I had to kind of the others don't work necessarily as well, but I made a few work, and it wasn't like I was rewriting the whole musical. I just kind of wrote some lyrics to some of the songs.
The way it was brought up
but then-
to me is that Jordan, your student, was talking to me, and he was like, "Have you talked to Martin lately?" And I was like, "No, I haven't talked to him in a while." And he goes, "I'm trying to figure out if he's okay or not." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "He's just been rewriting the entire musical. He's sending all the parts to us." And I was like, "That sounds awesome. What are you talking about? That's great." He was like, I just don't know. He's been so like obsessing over it. And I'm like, that's pretty funny. I think it's spectacular, actually.
Oh wow, that's funny. He thinks I'm obsessing over it. No, I got, my kids. Well, my kids are usually in they're doing their schooling in the morning, and then in the afternoon they're playing, and I've been cleaning the house and working around the house and stuff, and then we kind of get settled. We're all going to bed really late lately, and the girls are kind of but they're winding down or whatever. And about 10 o'clock, I start writing.
Right.
And it really didn't take me that much time or effort. But because a lot of them would just come to me. Some of them were a little bit more difficult than others, but like, and then, Oh Corona, the song, Oh Corona, where the that didn't take that long. I realized one of the songs that I sent to one of the actors wasn't going to quite fit because I didn't write enough to fit it into a full stanza or verse. Mm-hmm. And so I just, he messaged me and goes, "Hey, this doesn't quite work. This doesn't quite fit." And I looked at it and I was like, "Oh, he's right." So I took like 15 minutes and wrote a new verse, you know, and it's just doesn't, I'm not being terribly picky about it. I'm not being really, it's just kind of fun.
Yeah, it's just a fun thing to do. That's what I felt when I was talking to Jordan about it, because he mentioned that, and I was telling him about the one that I had done, the little short parody, and I was like, I don't know, it's something I don't think, like, I grew up listening to Weird Al and stuff like that, but I don't think I've ever written my own parody. But I've always I've always respected good parodies because they're just a lot of fun.
You didn't stay at ACU long enough. You didn't stay at ACU long enough for the sing song to get.
I did not. I did not
into your system. That's all that maybe. That's what that's all about.
Is it just like a bunch of parody songs?
Yeah, that's what they do. They take songs, popular songs, and they just rewrite the lyrics, and they pick a theme, and they just kind of, the lyrics fit the theme somehow. And I discovered I really liked writing parody songs, and it's just fun and kind of easy for me.
Have you written for Sing Song?
No, I never wrote for Sing Song. If any clubs or anybody wants to pay me, I think they write their own. I'm sure they do.
Start outsourcing to you, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, come on, why not?
You proved you're worthy with the O Corona. I
think so.
That should be your audition tape.
Well, and also, so I was at a church. I went to a church when I lived in Sugar Land, Houston area, that would write their own VBS skits. So if you go to a church and you know about VBS skits, usually they buy those, like they buy these packages from somewhere else. But this particular church would just write their own, and they would always do parody songs as part of their thing. And one year, the children's director, she knows that I'm a theater teacher, and I think I mentioned maybe that I write some plays and stuff. She asks me if I would write the script and the music for VBS that year. And so I actually sat down and wrote like about a 50-minute musical that we split up. So it was like 3 or 4 nights, I think 3 nights of VBS. And I wrote
how little are these kids that are like performing it?
Oh no, they're adults that are performing it.
Oh, like, for the kids.
For the kids. So it's like teenagers would be the youngest, but then we had elders from the church and old people as well performing it. So it was like the adults performing it for the kids. But I wrote this musical, and she kind of told me what she wanted it to be about, the basic kind of like theme around it. And usually I think they would have a different story every night. Yeah. But instead I decided to do one story. I asked her if that would be okay. I said, can I write one story and it just be kind of like done out over 3 nights? And she said that was fine. But they do music and they write parody songs. And so I wrote all these, I basically wrote a musical, a little short 45-minute musical, split up into 15-minute sections roughly. And it was fun. I did, Jesus was sent the demons out of the demon-possessed man and sent them into the pigs. I don't know if you remember that story, but
yeah.
So that was done to Play That Funky Music, White Boy, except it was Demons, Get Yourself Out of That Boy.
You know what this reminds me of? Have you ever listened to Carmen, the Christian singer?
I know who he is. I didn't.
Okay.
Okay. So I grew up in a very Christian. Like we went to church all the time, but like
Yeah.
we were the most secular. We were the most secular people at our church. My parents. We did not listen to Christian music at home. We didn't like.
Well, Carmen was less about being
Maybe-
Christian,
maybe
more about
a
being
cappella.
kind of goofy. I feel like because he was from.
Well, no,
he was.
but
from,
he wasn't goop.
He was.
I felt like he took it really seriously, but it just was.
Yeah, he took it seriously, but they were very theatrical. Like he was from
Yes.
Vegas, so
Yeah.
all of his things were very showy, and he had like
Yeah.
he had that one song about David and Goliath called like Sling Bang Boom or whatever. Like it's just like he's got like sound effects and everything going on.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely. I think that was
Yeah.
a Baptist thing, and I'm not Baptist. I think a lot of my Baptist friends knew him, but I'm not that familiar.
Well, it's a fun little nostalgia trip to go down memory lane and like watch him on YouTube every now and again, just because
Yeah.
he's so freaking goofy. But he's really into it.
I need to check it. Yeah,
Not to
I
make
think-
fun of him or anything. I mean, he
Yeah.
was into it and like good for him. But it is just like it's also super like 90s, which is goofy in and
Yeah.
of itself.
Well, I think it was the stuff I remember was like early '90s, which is basically the '80s still.
Yeah,
You know,
kind of leaking over.
but this VBS, I really tried for the most part to not like the songs don't take themselves that seriously, except there are like a few moments, like because I wrote a whole story and there are some like emotional depth. I tried to like write an actual like story that had some, it's basically a comedy with some like heart to it, you know? But like I wrote about Lazarus's death. And so I tried to, write a song parody that did take the subject seriously. And what was really cool about that was I ended up liking the story that I wrote, or that I kind of came up with, and it was it had some issues. It wasn't like a perfect but I wanted to expand it. So actually I've been, like I said, when I got back to teaching theater, I had less time to do this. But that first year, the next year was when we moved to Abilene, and I had some time off from theater, and I wasn't working nearly as much. That was one of the main things I worked on, was trying to take that and expand it into a full musical. And I've that's kind of something I've been working on for a long time, and it's one of those things that I'm kind of embarrassed to say how I'm not finished with it, even though I've been working on it now for the better part of 10 years.
Yeah. Well, it's better to be. I think it's much better to be not finished with it than to just push it out because you want to be finished with it.
Well, I'll go months and maybe even a year at a time. I don't think I've ever gone a full year, but I'll go months and months without even touching it or looking at it, just because I get really busy with work. But yeah, my hope is that someday I'll actually be able to, have some kind of production of it at some point. Who knows?
Well, that's the one thing I think that, or not the one thing, but one of the things that I'm grateful about this time. Like, obviously, I'm not like, woo, we have a global pandemic going on, but it's like, hey, like in light of all the crazy stuff going on, it does kind of give all of us just a moment to breathe, because we all have like such crazy lives. Everyone's so busy all the time doing whatever we feel like we have to stay afloat, and suddenly we all have got just a moment to kind of like, we don't even know what to do with our time. We've got so much time,
Right.
And so it's cool to hear you working on stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I saw a quote after I got myself in gear. It took me maybe a week or two before I was like, I need to be doing something more than just cleaning the house, making sure laundry is done. I'm spending a lot of time working with our girls on their schoolwork. My wife is. I want to make clear, my wife is spending much more time on that. She's kind of doing better with that than I am. But I am helping with them, and then I'd still also have my own schoolwork that we're required to put out there for our students.
What are you required to do? Like what kind of stuff?
We are required to give each one of our courses at least one. Well, actually, they didn't even say at least. They wanted us to just do one assignment per week per subject. So I teach technical theater and I teach theater production. Well, we kind of lumped theater 2, 3, and 4 in with production. So that's all one assignment. And then I have another assignment that I have to do for tech theater. But then it's really not that bad because we're also doing it with the Cooper teachers. So they're the other high school in town. Their teachers are also like we kind of split them up. So but they had us do 9 weeks to get us through to the end of school if we don't go back.
So what kind of stuff are you working on? What kind of
theater,
stuff are they working on? I mean,
well, I haven't. So that was the other thing was. Well, let me answer that question. So, the first week for our theater production class, I gave them the assignment to write a monologue from the perspective of one of 5 characters that I kind of described. I kind of created a 5 different character profiles that could be any gender, but like one was doctor who discovers coronavirus. Another is a spring breaker whose spring break in college vacation is being ruined by coronavirus. And then I had a couple others. Some of them were, kind of funny. Some of them were more serious. But I just said, choose one of these, write a monologue, and then perform it. So that was the first assignment. I have received one actual person turn in that one out of all those classes. That's production, theater 2, 3, 4 at Abilene High and Cooper. Now maybe the Cooper teachers had theirs send them to them directly. I don't know, but I've gotten one. We told them they were not required to do this. We were told that we cannot require them. It's not for a grade. They don't have to do it. And therefore, none of my students have actually been doing it. Now, in their defense, I don't know if I would have been doing it either. Number one, number two, they've probably got a lot of other stuff that they've got to do, like calculus and world history and stuff that like eventually like AP classes where they're like, if I'm going to take the AP test eventually, it's not like we can just go, wave our magic wand and say, hey, you've got credit for this class. You're good. We could, but they're still going to have to take that AP test. So they still need that information. And they're still going to be going on to that harder level next year. With theater, the kids, that are going to do that creative stuff are going to do it anyway. I don't have to encourage that. You know what I mean? The other thing that, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but the other thing that I'm also still requiring them to, if they're auditioning for production next year, they still also have to do that. And that probably seems more urgent to them. It would to me. So I'm not really blaming. Now, starting next week, the state Texas Education Agency has said that that's got to change. That that in order for them to receive credit, they are going to have to do at least one assignment, and then we're not going to give them grades, but we will have to like acknowledge that they did it, and give them some feedback. So that's going to change next week.
Yeah. I wonder, what I was curious about is I wonder what the AP test is going to look like. Because I remember when I took them, they were super, super serious about no one cheating. Like, they took us into a room and made sure, like, we didn't even have our bags on us or anything. They provided the pencil and made sure we were all a certain distance apart. So I wonder what that's going to look like, considering that we can't bring people together.
I would imagine it'll be just like that. It will just be later. I think they'll wait. I think they're going to wait until we can actually get. I think there's going to be a lot of things going on this summer. I think there's going to be a lot of things that. I mean, I think I could be wrong on this, but I want to say that they've already postponed graduation and said, "Hey, we're going to have graduation, but it's going to be like in August or something."
Yeah.
I may be mixing that up with something else, but I mean, for our theater kids, I plan. I really want to try and at some point They never got to perform their one act play. They never got to perform. And that contest is the contest aspect of that is more than likely canceled, which is a real bummer. For
You should do a Zoom
I know,
one act play where everyone can just zoom in and then do their own parts
Yeah.
from their room.
yeah, we could do that. I mean,
That'd be a fun version of the competition.
I've heard of directors having rehearsals that way, but like it's a real bummer for some of these schools that, especially like if they already advanced one level, because we didn't even go to contest. Some of the contests had already taken place. In fact, I think a lot of them had, and a lot of these schools that advanced, maybe these kids had never advanced before, and this was like their first year. They were excited to go on to the next level, and that it's a real bummer for them and everything. But we didn't, So I think we want to. I would like to see them get to perform that. I'd like to have a banquet. These seniors, they're not getting to have their senior theater banquet or choir banquet or band banquet for that matter. Our freshmen who, we would be inducting. That's all. I mean, that's kind of stuff we could probably do at the beginning of next year. But nevertheless, it's a cool thing that I hate to just miss out on completely.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see the creative compromises that people are kind of being like. I think what is like the limitation kind of breeds creativity. So I think it's interesting to see how different people are doing their normal things. I mean, besides just working from home, because there are obviously some things like theater which aren't as easy to do from home.
Yeah, But where's theater start? Theater starts with the writer sitting down, and that's where I've really been concentrating my creative is the writing. I had you have somebody who's hurting. Are they okay? Sounded really pained.
Some guy yelling at agony in the other room.
Anyway, I heard a quote, or I read a quote last week sometime, and it said, if you are still not getting that side hustle started or that project that you've been putting off, it's not, if you're still not doing it now, it's not because you didn't have the time, it's because you didn't have the discipline.
Yeah, we're finally out of excuses.
And luckily, I think I was actually going to say this earlier. Luckily, before I read that, I had already kind of like had that thought in my head. So I kind of There was definitely a little bit of like, I'm going to watch this Netflix show. I'm going to sit around and I'm going to, and then finally, I did kind of sit back and go, I've got all this time. I'm going to be really mad at myself if I don't do something with it. And then I read that quote, so I was like, yeah, good. I thought the same as this guy. But yeah, I thought that was a really good kind of point. Like, because I think about that all the time. Like when I'm tired and exhausted from work and come home and I'm like, man, I should write or I should play guitar or I should do something creative. And I'll think, am I not doing it because I'm actually tired, or am I not doing it because I don't have the discipline? And do I, if I have the time, should I consider the fact that, if I get home at 7 and I have to help with dinner and bedtime for our girls, and then I stay up watching Netflix from like 9 to 11 before I finally make myself go to sleep at 11:30 or whatever, that time from 9 to 11 or 9 to midnight that I'm just watching Netflix, that's 3 hours I could be writing. But then again, that's the only time I have where I'm like getting to decompress a little bit. But sometimes I do still feel guilty for not taking that 3-hour time frame to like do something more productive than watching TV. But then there's the other part of me that's like, well, but I need some time. I need that like kind of like time to take a breath.
Yeah.
You know, especially when I'm in the middle of like tech week at you know, for our musical or whatever. I need when I come home, I need to be able to just not do anything, you know, and zone out a bit.
I feel like I had a similar kind of. I had to air everything out for about a week and just like do as little as I possibly could. Like I played a bunch of video games, and me and my cousin just like hung around. And
Well,
then
like spring break, in spring break, we went out of town for almost the whole week. Almost the whole week we were on vacation, so I wasn't. And vacations are fun, but we're still kind of, you know. So I didn't really spend that week doing those things. So the next week,
right. But it's finally come to this point where, like, obviously I'm doing a podcast again, but also just writing that song yesterday. It was like the first time that I've like genuinely been really, really excited and like into something since this whole stay-at-home order has been issued. So I think what's important for people who maybe are still having issues being creative, who are creatives, I guess, or for people who want to be, is setting a small, like a really small goal that you'd be embarrassed not to be able to achieve, like 2 minutes of creative writing a day. So if you're not doing any creative writing, if you do 2 minutes a day for a week, well, that's more than you would have done had you been like, I should do 2 hours. And then you try to do 2 hours and you get bored with it and you're like, I'd rather do this. And you're zoning out and then you end up not doing it and then not doing anything for the rest of the week. And so,
right. Well, so I told you yesterday about my little embarrassing, you know, technology issue where my reminder that I set for myself every day came up on my iPad. My kids all saw it, and it said, you know, write every effing day. And so I told you about that. Well, my goal at that point was just to write for 30 minutes a day. Right. I figured, you know, I can write for 30 minutes a day. And obviously, like I said, I didn't always do that, but it was more or less successful in at least reminding me, you know, that I needed to do that. So write every day for just 30 minutes was my goal, just 30 minutes. But I found that if I sat down and wrote, I never stopped at 30 minutes. And like you said, if you said that an embarrassingly small amount of time, like 2 minutes, I'm not going to sit down and write for 2 minutes. I'm going to write for much longer. But you're right. If I could just say, you know, my goal is just to get out this one little sentence even. So I can spend 2 minutes. I can spend 2 minutes rewriting a three word sentence. You know what I mean?
Right.
Going like, does this sound better or does this sound better? You know, so if I can just figure that thing out, that's all I care about. And then I can go back to doing whatever. But it never turns out like that. Then I end up writing, you know, 10, 15 pages.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that is the frustrating thing, to be disciplined about it, because a lot of times, like, I've had to do that with studying before, because I was one of those people who was able to like slide through high school without ever really studying, and then college comes around, you're like, oh, that you can't do that. So
can you imagine? You think about all the people I admire in the entertainment industry who are like famous, or like my favorite people are usually your writers and actors and like producers. I'm thinking like Seth Rogen and James Franco and like that kind of crew, that group of guys. And Mindy Kaling is somebody who comes to mind. I've been listening to the Office Ladies podcast, and they talk about her a lot. Like people who just produce things. And I think to myself a lot, like, there's probably a lot of people out there who are just as creative, just as smart, but just sat on it too much. You know what I mean? And you think about like there's comedians, there's famous comedians that aren't even like the best comedians, but they've got, you know, an hour of material that, you know, they have success and they have a living as a stand-up comedian. And you go like, and their lives outside of their work seem so messed up with drugs and alcohol and all this other kinds of stuff. And you think, man, how are they able to like get a whole hour of of stuff done. Well, they just did it. That was what they wanted to do. That's all they wanted to do. You know what I mean? They were just singularly focused, and they like maybe that was. I'm sure it's all correlated. I'm sure their alcohol problems were probably correlated with the fact that they were always.
I do have a thought
clubs,
on that.
You know?
I do have a thought on that because I've never been a drug addict or alcoholic, but I have been a similar kind of creative. Like, I'm the creative who has a really hard time delegating. Like, I want to wear all the hats. I want to be the director and the writer and the actor. Like, Black Roses, when I did that, it was so frustrating. Like, Shelton did a great job, my main actor, and I'm glad that he ended up doing it, but he had never acted before, so I had to be particularly, I had to work with him more than a lot of the other actors, and this was a different character, and since I've created it, it's basically like, you know, my child, and I felt like I really knew how to portray it. And so every time, you know, a director's never supposed to do a line read. And so I never did, but I always wanted to be like, no, say it like this. You need to say it like this. And then I wanted to tell him.
It's funny with younger actors, they sometimes want you to do a line read. I've always been of the mindset that you don't do a line read either, you know, especially
because it doesn't teach them how to act. It doesn't teach them how to figure out how to be the character.
Yeah. But I have had actors, high school kids who are good actors too, who have just said, I know you don't want to do a line read, but would you please just tell me how you want me to say this?
Seems like there's obviously a way that you want it read.
But then I have to sit back and go, you know what? It's not even necessarily about delegating. It's about collaborating.
Right. And
it's about being able to say, like, yes, I wrote the script for this, but if this is a true collaboration, you know, we're gonna. It's just a blueprint, you know. If you have a blueprint for a house and you realize that, oh, I can't dig here because there's a line or the electricity has to come in this way or the plumbing has to come in this way or something like that, then you have to adjust, you know. And then I've had to, as a director especially, get used to the idea that that just because an idea might not be mine doesn't mean it's not the best idea. And so I really tried to, I have, you know, in my early days, I didn't do this as much, but I think recently I've been really trying to much more, you know, take all good ideas and it doesn't have to be mine. And I don't care if it doesn't necessarily. Now, granted, as
sounds
the director,
like
my job
you've
is
now
to
got
have
someone
a vision.
in agony.
Yeah, I know. It's my dog. He's got a window that he'll go and look out, and if he sees a cat, he just flips out. He's just like, "There's a cat!"
Yeah, cat's out there, not social distancing.
Yeah.
That's what he's just like. He's like really, really trying to be the social justice warrior out there. He's like this cat's putting people's lives at stake.
Well, you know, they said dogs can't get it, but a tiger at the Bronx Zoo got it.
Dude, I heard that. I think it's Carol Baskin hard at work. Have you seen the Tiger King yet?
Yes.
Yeah. It's probably because the freaking tiger ate her husband. Her husband probably had it.
Oh man.
That's pretty great.
Yeah,
I like how that's correlated with the quarantine because everyone's stuck right when that came out, and it became like the official documentary series.
Yeah, I also started watching. Oh, dude, you'll love this. Do you have Hulu?
Yes.
Go watch Too Funny to Fail. It's the story of the Dana Carvey show. The Dana Carvey show is like this sketch comedy show from like 1995, 1996.
Yeah, I know of Dana Carvey.
And well, he did a sketch comedy show right after he left SNL that was supposed to be the new cool, the best, you know, thing, and it was this big deal. They promoted it as like, hey, Dana Carvey's going to come on and do all of his characters, yada yada yada. Well, he hired Louis C.K. to be his head writer. He hired Steve Carell, Steve Colbert, who were both, neither of them had ever done anything at that point. Mm-hmm. He hired Robert Smigel was his co-creator. Do you know who Robert Smigel is?
I don't think so.
He's a SNL writer who was the creator of Insult the Comic Dog, and He also did the ambiguously gay duo cartoons. Well, like he's this. So they started putting out all these really strange, odd, off the wall sketches that mainstream America was not ready for, and they put it the time slot they put it in was like right after Home Improvement.
Yeah.
So it was just like it was going from like
Just
clean
a pretty
family
dramatic,
fun,
pretty dramatic shift.
yeah, clean family fun into insane, like should have been on HBO type of comedy. And you hear people say that you go back and watch it now and it's like, oh, this was just way before its time. It was like genius level comedy, but it was just so far out there. And like the first sketch of the first show showed Dana Carvey doing an impersonation of Bill Clinton breastfeeding. and he had altered himself so that he could like breastfeed, and he had like dog nipples that like went all the way down. And so it was just like, and they said people who had just watched Home Improvement were just
not
like
ready for that. Yeah.
Just like, nope. Off.
It's an I think that's so interesting that that's a issue that has seemingly kind of died. Like it doesn't like the time slot of a show, because now every show is whenever you want it. So it doesn't really matter.
Exactly, for sure. And it doesn't matter if you are a, Colbert person or a Jimmy Fallon person, because you can just watch them online, both of them. You can watch them online later. Before it used to be who's the better. It used to be Dave versus Jay Leno. Dave Letterman versus Jay Leno. It was a big like, who's
they go on at the same time.
Who's the bigger Tom? Yeah, they go on at the same time and they're against each other. I mean, I guess they still do have competition like that, but you'll see Colbert and Fallon like,
but you don't really have to pick a
on
side
each other's
as an audience member.
You don't. No, you don't. But you're right though. That's interesting.
But anyways, going a little bit back to what I was saying before, you were talking about people who do all these different creative things, and I've noticed that because growing up, I always had to do that, and creative projects would kind of that's a Freudian slip, would always take so much of me, and I'd kind of burn out on them eventually. Like I start so ambitiously, and it starts really high, and then kind of just falls off because I'm the director and the writer and the actor and the cinematographer when I was making YouTube videos when I was in 7th grade. So I'm doing all these different things. And I didn't have. There was a time where I was doing videos every 2 videos a week, every week when I was in 7th grade, and it I didn't have a social life at that point. Not because I didn't socialize with kids, I just didn't have time because I was always working on this. And then when I quote unquote would have time, I would just be completely out of it. So I can get these kind of creatives that can't collaborate and can't let other people kind of take some of the weight, I don't know if it's too much to say emotional weight of the project, because it wears you down. And when you kind of share it with a bunch of different people, I've noticed as I've started to get a little bit better at that, you can actually live life. Because I remember I edited a little bit of Black Roses, but most of it was done by these 2 other guys. And so once it was done filming, a lot of it, they would kind of send stuff to me and I would approve stuff and then I'd send it back. And I didn't feel completely and utterly consumed during the amount of time, because it took a while to edit the thing, and that would have been a long time to be completely consumed by it. And I can understand people just being burned out, they're kind of socialized being a wreck at that point. So I definitely think there is a correlation to that. With that.
And I think there's something more satisfying about that too. I think there's something more satisfying about knowing that you have done something that's better than if you had just done it yourself.
Right.
There's something very satisfying to me about looking back and seeing a collaboration as opposed to, I see this in organizations a lot, organizations where let's say it's a community theater that somebody started, and it was their pet project and their baby, and they got it going, and I've seen this in community theaters. I've actually seen it in professional theaters, where if that person were to leave, it would crumble and die. You know what I mean? And like their name is synonymous with the thing, and I think it's much more impressive when you create something that can exist for longer,
like the band Genesis.
Yeah, sure.
I feel like
that was kind of out of nowhere, but
well,
okay.
no, because that's what I was thinking of, because they had Peter Gabriel, and they were this great band, then Peter Gabriel left, and everyone was like, man, what's Genesis gonna do? And then freaking Phil Collins came out of nowhere as the drummer, started singing,
but it was
they still had it going on.
Different band. But it was a very different band. I don't think that's necessarily a great example, because
it was different. But the point is, like, they were still able to. They were good enough collaborators that they were still able to keep something going.
Yeah, but instead of being like
that was my
an artsy progressive rock band, they became a more like standard pop band. Mm-hmm. But okay, I think it's
I just wanted to bring up my cultural knowledge of time before I existed.
Okay, yeah. Are you into Genesis right now, like the old Peter Gabriel era Genesis?
I'm not particularly. I think Genesis is great. They're not in my top 10 bands or anything. I do think they're interesting because they're not like super known. Like I feel like especially among people my age, like obviously Michael Jackson's super known, and like what's freaking Queen, they're super known. But if I mention like Genesis, everyone my age would be like, what are you talking about? Like Boston, kind of.
Now, by the way, I meant to tell you this. I had forgotten how good of a singer you are.
How good of a singer I am?
That little, that parody video that you did. Like, I was like, oh yeah, Jackson's a great singer. Because
dude,
you didn't sing a lot. And the one year that I actually had you in the school, you didn't really sing a lot. You were in Pure Gold, but then you didn't do that second semester, and then during the musical you didn't really sing in the musical because of the part you played, and but yeah, it's like, and then of course the rest.
Did you see She Loves Me, the one I was in at the same time?
Yeah, that's right. I did see She Loves Me. That's right. You sang a lot in that. I forgot about that.
But I don't think we had microphones,
but I guess
so it's a little different.
No, it was fine. I just had forgotten that how good of a voice you had. So you sounded nice.
Well, dude, thanks. I appreciate that. I'm so weirdly indifferent about my voice. Like I have no idea. Although I've gone from disliking it to being indifferent about it. So I think I'm making progress in the self-love department, because I did listen to that video as I was editing it. And I didn't cringe. I was like, it's not bad. This sounds like it's one of those voices where it's like, in my opinion, it's like if the song and the lyrics, if this melody sounds good and the lyrics are good, I get away with it, because it's just, to me, it sounds like vanilla, where it's like there's nothing. It's not like Cookie Two-Step or anything, like some crazy different unique flavors coming out. But it works, and it rides well. It's like that's fine.
I don't know what Cookie Two-Step is.
Oh my god, it'll change your world. So Cookie Two-Step, it's Bluebell. The half of it is cookies and cream, and half of it's just straight up cookie dough, and it's Bluebell ice cream, and it's incredible.
Wait, it's not. It's cookie dough ice cream, or just cookie dough.
So it's half cookies and cream ice cream, and then half literally just cookie dough. Like, I mean, I guess it's not proportionally half and half. It's more like 3/4 cookies and cream.
Hold on, I gotta stop you. You're telling me that Bluebell put cookies and cream on one side? Because I've seen the half.
No. It's not half and half. It's not that dramatic. It's like lumps of cookie dough within it.
Oh, okay. Because I have seen the. Have you seen they
the Great Divide? Yeah.
half a gallon of one flavor, half a gallon of the other. Yeah. That's kind of what I thought it was.
Yeah, it's not like
that. So you're saying
that
it's
would
cookie
be
and cream
magical.
Ice cream. So they have an ice cream that's called cookie dough ice cream, and it's ice cream with little lumps of cookie dough in it.
Right.
So
So
you're saying
imagine
it's
that, but instead that ice cream is cookies and cream.
Dude, I gotta try that.
Dude, it's so good. It's the
That
in my
sounds
opinion, it's
awesome.
the best flavor. It's incredible because it's
I've
so
got- I've
unique
been-
and beautiful. I've wanted to
I'm-
write poems about it.
I've
It's so
been-
magnificent.
I'm really struggling right now because today was the day I was going to dedicate myself to losing some of
To lose weight.
some of the roundness that I've gained over the last few weeks. I was in need of. I've been really good about like. I haven't been losing weight. I needed to lose weight, but I haven't been losing weight. But I haven't been gaining either. Like over the last several months or so.
I've been gaining.
But these
That's
last
the
3
situation I've been in.
Well, I mean, you're getting to the age where you're gonna have to,
start freaking
when
looking
you're-
at it, yeah.
When you're in high school, you can just kind of get away with whatever.
Yeah.
But these last 3 weeks, I went ahead and I was like, stood on the scale the other day. I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. So today was the day I was gonna commit myself to watching what I'm eating and
In
exercising.
that case,
a
I'm
little bit,
really
but,
sorry for telling about the flavor that will change your life forever.
Yeah,
But I'm also not sorry.
Maybe I
'cause
need
it's great.
Maybe I need to run to the store with my mask, get some of this stuff, and then start tomorrow on my diet.
That's my number one piece of advice. If you're going to exercise and change your diet, always start tomorrow, never today. Because then you can try more ice cream.
Yeah. Did you have questions for me, or have you
do have
been asking them and I just haven't
I've
been noticing?
subtly kind of asking them. So I have.
Okay.
So I talked to my therapist father, who I'm accidentally following in the footsteps of. But I was talking about that we're doing an episode loosely on creativity, and I was telling him about how much fun I was having writing, and he was saying because. That's because a lot of the issues that people have when they typically become depressed is they start getting overcritical, and which is anti-creativity, and inward focused. So they're focused on every single thing about them. And when you're stuck inside your house, it's harder to focus on outward things because you're literally and physically inside, and so you're kind of stuck thinking about yourself and stuff like. I'm so out of shape and I need to be doing this and I'm not reading. I have all the time in the world. I have no excuses. I'm not reading. I'm just thinking about all the things I'm doing improperly instead of focusing out.
Can I throw something in real quick?
Go ahead.
I don't read enough either.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons I don't read is because if I start reading and I'm really enjoying it, a lot of times all I'm thinking is I should be writing something at this good. And I want to go, and I want to stop reading and go writing. Anyway,
Yeah.
keep going. I interrupted you.
I do have. That's a funny thing because I'm a huge admirer of poetry, and I love reading Walt Whitman and Robert Frost and stuff. But it's sometimes really frustrating because I'm a narcissist and I feel like I'm probably a better writer than I actually am, and so I'll read it and it frustrates me that I couldn't have written that. Because the thing about a lot of poetry,
you're not a true narcissist. By
there
the way.
are better
You're-
narcissists than
you're-
me, but
You're just
better at the
you're
skill
just a
of
young
narcissism.
you're just a young person. I mean, you'll it's not
I'm just
You're
a little,
not a narcissist
I'm just
because-
a little cocky.
you're interested in other people. The very fact
Yeah.
that you want to talk to other people on a podcast makes you I think is very
I'm just gonna make my face
non-narcissistic.
slightly bigger when I edit it together.
Well, and you don't well, from what I've seen, you don't manipulate people to make it all about you.
Right.
That's the true narcissist is that it's you damage relationships because you are constantly you can't listen to anyone else's problems without somehow making it yours.
I think
that's the true narcissist. I haven't seen you do that. I mean,
I think I'm inward enough that I think this is what will hopefully make me a good psychologist is that I'm inward enough that while I'm in a conversation with somebody and they're telling me about their problems, I feel that urge to make it about me, but I'm so in my head that I can see that urge. This is more metaphysical than physical, but I can see the urge in my head and be like, "Oh," and recognize that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing. I need to be listening to what
I think that I think that just makes you a Gen Z 20-year-old,
Well, I think it's normal
person.
to want to make stuff
Yeah.
about you because we always want to be cared for. But I think it helps that I'm very
I still want to do
inward.
it. I still want to do it. I mean, I'm better at it now than I was when I was 20, but I still have that urge. It's not a. I don't think it's a narcissism. I don't think it's a narcissistic thing. It's a.
I think maybe I try to
I don't know, there's-
overcompensate. Maybe I try to overcompensate in my awareness of my potential to be narcissistic. So I overcompensate by saying that.
You're narcissistic in the same way that people are OCD when they say, "Oh, I'm OCD. I have to have this area cleaned up."
Yeah, it's not
You
like
know,
it's like
that's
it
not-
is. It still is technically OCD, but it's not like to any kind of clinical level where you'd need to get help for it.
Sure.
I did have an argument with someone recently about that exact thing because they were talking about. I was saying how I'm OCD, and they go, "You're not OCD. There are people who are worse than you." And I go, "Yeah, I know that, but that doesn't mean that I'm not OCD. It's like I'm bad at skateboarding, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people worse than me at skateboarding. Like people have worse problems skateboarding, but I'm still not great at skateboarding. It's still fair to say that I'm a bad skateboarder." So like I am fairly
to be
obsessive
a bad skateboarder
and
to be a bad
compulsive about
skateboarder,
a
does
lot of
that
stuff.
mean to be a bad skateboarder? Does that mean that you do sometimes skateboard?
I do sometimes skateboard, yeah.
And so
And I do it poorly, but I enjoy doing it.
So if you were to keep doing it, you would probably become a better skateboarder.
I would probably be. It's not a perfect metaphor, but I think you get the idea of what I'm trying to get across. I feel like we were saying something when I was talking about I'm a narcissist. Oh, because you were talking about my voice. You were talking about how great I am. That's what was happening. About my voice.
You were gonna ask me a question.
Right. Sorry, I was just trying to make it about me for a minute. So we need to do. We need. I'm talking about we're inward focusing, so we need to do more outward focusing on things like so. When you are creative, first of all, being critical is the number one, like, murderer of creativity. That's a dramatic phrase, but like I remember. It's kind of weird to describe, but I went to this like creative brainstorming party one time, which is weird to say, but I hang out with a lot of creative people. That's a
very nerdy sentence.
It's pretty great. No, it was pretty cool. Like we had food, and then we broke off into different rooms and came up with different ideas. Anyways,
it is a very nerdy thing, but it actually sounds like a ton of fun.
It was super cool.
Jealous. Anyway,
but
keep going.
Basically, before we broke off, the guy who was hosting it had read a bunch of books about it, and he was a super creative guy. And so he kind of went over a couple ground rules for us based on this book that he had just read about it. And one of the things was we can't shoot down any ideas until the end, until we come back together. And so every single idea that you have, it's similar to a psychological idea that Freud came up with, which is the free association, which is like he'll say a word, and then you kind of have to just go off saying whatever comes to your head, no matter what it is. So I'll say like kite, and then you just have to start immediately verbalizing every word that comes to your head. You can't critique it because you're like, oh, that's weird, or oh, that's inappropriate, or oh, that's off topic, or something like that. You just keep going, and that's kind of what we had to do. And so we had these big whiteboards in every room, and we would come up with different like scenarios that we needed to be creative with or whatever. It is more and more nerdy as I'm describing it, but everybody that had an idea would just kind of throw it up there, and it was so freeing because some of them were dumb ideas, but we didn't think about that. We just wrote them all down, and we just came up with all these different things. And then we had like 100 different things to work from, and then we brought them all together from each room, and then we had 100 is maybe an exaggeration, but say we had 50 things per room. We bring them together, we have like 500 things to now work with that we didn't have an hour ago. And then we're going through all these ideas, and we had like probably 20 to 30 things that were like, whoa, these are great ideas. These are really cool for like stories or for whatever we were working on. And that is the key, I think, to proper creativity, is knowing there has to be, in the beginning, a level of complete and utter lack of judgment about your ideas. If you have an idea, you have to write it down, because every time I've had a lot of trouble writing songs since my musical, because I have trouble, like, whenever I start writing something, I'm like, this isn't very good, and I start judging it and going, I don't want to work really hard on a song that's going to end up not being good, and so I give up on it. And I just haven't written a lot of songs since my musical, because every time I've tried to write one, I'm like, this isn't as good as what I could do, and then I end up not doing it. I think there's a great line. Let me say my quote real quick. There's a great line that Jordan Peterson said once that has reminded me of it and helped me to start writing again, which is, I think I wrote it down exactly, actually. It's something like, I swear I wrote it down. You have to be willing to be a fool. Oh, here it goes. If you're not willing to be a fool, you can't become a master, which I think is so true, because, like, I think my short film was all right. I don't know that I would call myself a master at making short films yet, but they're definitely better than all the freaking videos I was making in, like, 5th grade. And you go back, and it's like, I had to be willing to be a fool and make these shitty videos that I was just, like, not judging, and I was just going for it. And I was like, this is great. And I just put it all out. And slowly, even though I didn't know that it was going on at the time, I was slowly getting better and better and better. And eventually, after all of this learning experience, I finally come to actually put together a narrative that makes sense and isn't completely corny the entire time.
That's absolutely true. I mean, like, everything you were saying is absolutely true. I went. I mean, like, in every year, the first day of school, I try to say that kind of thing to my students every year, and I probably need to reiterate it more often throughout the year, because high school students, particularly high achieving high school students, are terrified of looking foolish, are terrified of failing, and they could have all the talent in the world, but they don't want to put themselves out there. And I try to say at the beginning of the year, like this, I describe our classroom as an experimental laboratory. Like, this is, we're here to experiment. Yes, the plays that we do, that we rehearse for 6, 7, 8 weeks or however long, those we want to hone those and get those. But in the early days of the rehearsal, I want to see what you've got. I want you to come out, and I want you to. You don't have to even ask me for permission. Kids have started to catch on this, but one of my biggest pet peeves has always been kids coming up to me going, like, "Can I do this?" And it's like the smallest little thing, and it's not like they're asking me if they can,
like, change the character,
do a cartwheel, not change the character, not do a cartwheel across the stage. They're not asking if they can, like, slap another character. They might be going, what if I were to, like, when I say this line, make this face? I'm like, I don't know, try it. And that's usually my answer when they ask me if they can do something. I usually say, I don't know, try it, because I might say, yeah, that sounds good, and then see it and not like it. Or I might, and this is, I think, one thing I've learned over the years to do is to say, try it. Because if you asked me, sometimes it doesn't sound like a good idea, but I might be wrong, So
yeah, but the worst thing that could happen is it's just going back to the way that it was before. It's you miss all the shots you don't take, kind of thing.
And I tell them, I say, the worst that can happen is I can tell you not to do it ananymore. And I think
and you were already there before you decided you wanted to do it.
Right. And I think that kids are terrified of me telling them no. I think they're terrified of me saying, nah, that doesn't work. But what I try to instill in them, what I try to let them know as early as possible is that's okay. Like, it's okay for something not to work. If you're not trying anything, and if you're only trying things that work, you're never really gonna find that much. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like you said, you've got to be able to be willing to look like a fool in order to be a master. That's a great quote. I like it. Yeah, for sure. Another good example. I've been playing a lot of cornhole in my backyard, and I've been getting much better at it. And my daughter came out and she was like, you're so good. How do you? And I was like, I just been playing. And she comes out and I'm like, here, you play. And she like tosses it and it's going everywhere. And she's horrible. She's not making it. And I'm like, well, just stick with it and you'll get better. And sure enough, it's like,
sure enough, you'll be the cornhole master. That's what I want to.
The cornhole master.
It's the name of my next hit single.
You know what? Some parents want to see their kids become doctors. Some parents want to see their kids become like famous musicians or actors. I just want my daughter to play cornhole to the best of her abilities. That's
cornhole's got one of those beautiful, ridiculous names like badminton in my mind. It's like it's so absurd that it's amazing.
Cornhole is the worst. No, cornhole.
It's worse than badminton. There's no mittens involved. At least there's a hole involved in cornhole.
Well, it's because it's not bad. It's not badminton. It's badminton. I think.
What does that mean? What does midden mean?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, who knows? It probably means mitten.
I don't know.
In another
and
accent.
It's called a birdie. And the thing you play with is called a birdie.
Well, that flies through the air.
Shuttle.
So I feel like I get that slightly more.
I could be wrong about this, but I think it might actually be called a shuttlecock.
The thing that flies through the air, the ball with the
birdie. I think another term for it is shuttlecock.
Okay, maybe we should move on. Maybe we've gone down a hole. Let me like cornhole, if you will.
A cornhole.
Yeah.
I just realized we've almost been on this for. I think we've been on it for about an hour. I probably don't have a lot more time, but anyway.
Okay. Well, let me ask you one or two questions at least.
Sure.
I want to ask what inspires you the most. Like, what kind of creative setting gets you going where you're like, okay, I'm in the mode. I got to start doing something. If you had to pinpoint something.
I'm really creative. Believe it or not, I think I'm really creative in a situation like this where I just have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of time on my hands. I can only sit around for so long. Like sitting around and being, and like when I talk to my kids at the beginning of the school year and I say, "What did you do over this summer?" And if they come back with like, "I just sat around and watched Netflix," or "I didn't do anything," I don't understand that. That's a level of I can't fathom.
Mm-hmm.
I think I get really creative under pressure. Like when I have to get something done, when people are expecting things of me, I think I can be pretty creative. Then I think the best thing though is just, I mean, the greatest thing is being around a bunch of people who are all happy to be there, are all singularly focused, and are enjoying the work. One of my greatest joys since working at Abilene High was directing, and I've loved all the shows I've directed, but we kind of keep coming back to Bubble Boy because it was such a fun show to work on.
Yeah.
The end product, I almost never remember the end product correctly. I will go back and watch videos and I'll be like, this isn't as good as I remembered it being. Or conversely, this isn't as bad as I remembered it being. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because I remember the experience. And working on Bubble Boy was just such a fun experience. We had 16 kids in the cast. Every single one of them was happy to be there, and it was, and were I hope they were, and it was just so much fun. And we were working on something that none of us had ever seen or worked on before. It was all brand new to all of us, and and then I think also the little added pressure of, hey, the writer's gonna be there,
yeah,
and he's a actual like successful Hollywood writer. We should, I think that little bit of pressure helped the creative juices spur along.
Yeah, that was pretty dang cool. Like I wasn't even involved in that show, and it was cool.
Yeah.
I was jealous hearing about it. I mean, I did come and meet him, but I wasn't involved in the show.
Yeah. Well, it was so much fun. But I think
his name is Cinco Paul, for those of you who are curious.
Yeah, Cinco Paul, and Ken Dario was his co-writer, but Ken wasn't there.
And Cinco's the one who created the Minions, the infamous.
Well,
Minions.
he wrote Despicable Me, and the Minions were, and in his talk back he apologized for that. but yeah, no, it was just so much fun, and it was one of my highlights as a director. Another one I would say, there was a show I directed at Cooper, James and the Giant Peach, not the musical, but just a straight play version of James and the Giant Peach, and sometimes I just have a creative vision, and sometimes I put the creative vision in the back of my mind, and but if I allow myself to go towards that, it usually is another way that I am really creative. Is if I follow my intuition, the coronavirus parody of Oklahoma. That's a really small example of that, but that's another example of that. Like, instead of sitting on it and going, "Hey, that'd be kind of funny," I actually followed it and did it.
Yeah. Do you have any aspirations for your parody of Oklahoma?
It's kind of in the ball of the kids now. I sent it out there and I said, "Hey, I want you to record this and send it back to me." Mm-hmm. And as long as they do that, I'm just gonna put it. I mean, I'm gonna edit it together and then put it out there, and just that's it.
Yeah. So a second question is kind of
parodies are also really fun because parodies are protected under copyright law.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about them like being mad at you because it's like, it's a parody. It's not, you can parody something without having to worry about violating a copyright.
I always think of the copyright people as have you seen Be Kind Rewind with Jack Black?
Yeah, a long time ago.
They make I
don't remember. I know it's got him and a rapper.
They accidentally ruined all of the VHSs in their store, and the way that they keep it afloat is they have to recreate all the movies in their backyard, kind of thing. And in the end,
I remember that.
Towards the end, the copyright people come, and it's Sigourney Weaver leading the way. And it's like she's wearing like a fancy business suit, and they've got a bulldozer to like destroy the store. It's like that's what I imagine the copyright people as, like coming in with a bulldozer, trying to stop them. But my other question is quite the opposite, which is, what do you think your creative weaknesses? Like what kind of destroys creativity for you?
I think those are two different questions. One of them is, what am I? What is something that I'm not good at? I'm getting better at it, but I'm not intrinsically motivated very much. I think being a teacher is really good for me because the kids are dependent on me, and the students are expecting something when I show up every day, and so I have to be ready for that. I tried to be an actor for a couple years, and I didn't have the intrinsic motivation to like. Nobody was going to care whether or not I showed up at an audition. I had to do that. It had to be because I wanted to do it. That's why it's taken me so long to write, to finish anything that I start writing. Because I'll have like 1 or 2 days where I'm like, I get a spark of creativity. But like sitting down to force myself to do it is really tough for me. But like being, like I said, like the idea of going out and being an actor, nobody's going to make you do that. Nobody's expecting you to do it. Nobody's going to care if you show up or not.
Yeah, there's no deadlines kind of thing.
There's no deadlines. I have to put myself into situations where people are counting on me for something, and that helps. That actually helps me. That doesn't help spur my creativity so much as it helps spur my discipline, I guess.
Right.
You could say. So that's my weakness. The other thing you asked was what kills creativity, and negative people, just people who don't want to be there, people who don't, and that's tough when you're a teacher.
You mean like actors kind of thing?
I mean anybody. It could be actors or technicians or could be anybody. I mean, just people, being in any situation. But like if I'm around people who genuinely just don't really care and don't want to be there, that is really tough for me. It's a huge bummer for me. And I've got, I've had classes where I'm like, you get to choose which fine arts class you took, and you have made it very clear you don't want to be here. So why are you here? And yet my job is still to teach you. My job is still to find a way to inspire you. And sometimes I've been able to like get kids who came in with kind of like a chip on their shoulder, and I've been able to like pull them in a little bit. But then there've been other times where I'm just like I've done everything I can that I know to do, and what else can I do? Let me try to find something. I'm throwing lots of things out here to try and get you engaged in some way, and it's not working. Luckily, we have an end of the school year. I don't think I try never to give up on kids, but once they're out of my classroom, then they're out of my classroom. But yeah, just being around people who are negative, have bad attitudes. I want to go find your thing. If this isn't it, then go find your thing. 'Cause I want you to be happy. I want you to be successful. But you couldn't put me in, let's say, when I was in high school, especially, you couldn't have put me in like the science decathlon, whatever, and expected me to be successful, because even if I knew this information, it was not fun for me. Like it wasn't something that I enjoyed doing, so I wasn't going to be successful in it. So yeah. Anyway, that's a pet peeve, I guess, but it's also the thing that will drain me of my own creativity really quick.
I don't know if this is a little off subject, but I'm curious when you think you may have figured out that you were a creative. Like as a kid or in college, like what was the point when you were like, oh, I think this is my thing. I think being creative is kind of my thing.
I grew up in sort of a creative family, so it was just sort of something that was always done. My dad did community theater. My mom was a singer. My grandparents were even kind of involved in community theater, and my granddad was our song leader at church, and like it. Being creative, especially music, was always just kind of like what we did. It was just kind of the standard. In fact, there were times where I thought like, is this the only reason I like doing theater because I was raised around it, or is it like I often wonder if I had been brought up in a family that didn't do theater, if I would have found my way there. I might not have. I don't know. But I've come to realize that no, this is like, it's what I love and it's what I do, and I've certainly been around people who do it better. I don't think that I'm necessarily like the best by any stretch in any like niche of what I do, but it is what I love, and I never really had a thought for doing anything else. That's not true. No
more lying on the podcast, Kyle.
Well, I said that, and then I realized
it's
not true. When I was thinking about what I wanted to major in college, you had to audition for the theater department at ACU, and I didn't get in at first. And so I thought, I guess I'm just not going to do that. In fact, I was like, I'm going to go be a journalism major. And so that was something else I had some interest in, was being a journalist. And I'm still kind of like, I find journalism really important and really fascinating. And so like but then I got a call like about a week or two after I got my rejection from the theater department letter. I got a call saying, hey, a spot opened up and you're now going to be a theater major. And then it was like, oh, okay. And then I dropped journalism like a rock.
Yeah.
So no, like it something creative, and I think journalism is creative too. I think that so creativity and like kind of being using my using my charm or whatever in some way has always been what I knew I would do. And I even think that one of the reasons I like the idea of journalism is I like the idea of being in front of camera.
Yeah.
You know, so
I think that's a cool story about
talk about being narcissistic. You know, I was like, I want people to see me. That's all I want.
I think that's a cool story about you, like barely getting into the theater department. Like in my mind, it's the college equivalent of Indiana Jones slipping into the thing and grabbing his hat at the last second right before the door closes. It's like I just got in. I'm so freaking sly. Like that's pretty cool.
That's my whole life. That's been my whole life. I've just got in under the wire.
Yeah.
Like I've just been able to just squeeze in, and I'm like, I've never been the slam dunk. I've never been the one who you watch and go, oh, we're lucky to have that guy.
It's the ball that spins around the rim, almost looks like it's about to fall out, and then it goes in.
Yeah, I've always been the one who was like, so our plan A didn't work out. Who else do we have?
Yeah,
you know, like that's my insecurities. I've just always felt like that.
Well, hey man, that's super cool that you've been able to make it work. Like that's the dream.
Yeah. I've never felt like I was probably the one that they were like, well, obviously, you know.
Yeah.
I'm always the one they're like, well, have we considered Kyle? No, I haven't really considered. Well, who else do we have? No, okay, yeah, he'll work. You know,
Yeah.
Like, so I think I've always felt myself that way, and so I also love the underdog for that very reason.
Yeah.
Myself, you know, let's consider the people who aren't like absolutes. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's weird.
I don't do that enough.
This is me being a try not to be narcissistic, but all throughout high school, and I did theater every single year. I got every single role I auditioned for except for one, and that was the that fire exit play that Kathy Fisher directed. And I think it was because
Man, I wish it was me. I wish it had been.
I wish you would have given me the role that I didn't want.
I wish it would have been, because I've actually done that before.
I thought you were gonna give me that Robert guy in The Drowsy Chaperone instead of Man in Chair.
Well,
that's what everyone was saying. All the gossip was they had already casted it, and I think Trey in everyone's mind was gonna be the man in the chair, and I was gonna be Robert. And I was like, man, secretly, I really want to be the man in the chair.
Well, and honestly, the thing is, that was my thought too. But that's why I always love telling kids, like, if I ever hear people talk about like how you precast or whatever thing, I'm like, I've tried to be honest. Like, you can't not go into a situation having an idea as to, like, I wouldn't do a play if I didn't know I had certain people who could play these parts. But that's one of the things I love about auditions. I've never gone into an audition with my thought being one way and not changed it.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of think you're right. I think I did think I'm, you know, in my mind, Trey would have been a great man in chair.
Yeah, and I mean, he probably would have done really well.
And then you brought something to it I hadn't really thought about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't know James Melson was, and he came and was like, Robert, what does, you know, he was like, boom, and we went, oh,
it was like this shift that happened.
Yeah, and then Trey was awesome as the underling. He nailed that part, like, which I wouldn't have.
Underling is very underrated. I think he is like one of the greatest characters of that show, because he's the like, I feel like what the audience is able to relate to and all of the freaking craziness of what's going on. Which is how I felt, because I played Tony and You Can't Take It With You, so I was the one straight man when everyone's freaking out. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty fun to kind of mirror the audience and be like, this is
Yeah.
insane. What's going on? But yeah, Trey did great
Yeah.
with that role. And I remember you
No, but
telling
he
me.
was
I
fantastic.
remember you telling me.
That was that might have actually been my favorite dynamic was him and Sarah.
Yeah.
And their little playfulness and the
Yeah.
spit take was. I love it. I love it when there's a scene that I have watched over and over and over and over again, and I'm still laughing at. And that was one of those.
I liked.
That was one of those.
I thought it was funny during auditions when I was auditioning for it, and like you were like taking me off the side and like, hey, he like doesn't sing or anything, and I was like, yeah, and you're like, and he doesn't dance either, and I was like, yeah, no, I know, I want this role, and you're like, and you're sure this is the role you want, and I was like, yeah, no, this is the one. I like this guy, and you're like, oh, okay,
yeah.
So I thought it was really funny.
Cool, because you had put that as your first, and honestly, I think I don't think I realized. I just didn't. I hadn't seen anybody at that point who could carry the vocal portion of Robert's character, and so there was a little bit of like a, why does he want that? That's not this. Yeah, but I think it worked out.
Yeah, I did. Well,
that was a good show.
My whole strategy in high school with roles was I always wanted to try to be someone different than I had been before, and the old recluse, flamboyant gay guy I'd never done that before, and I had so much fun. Like, it was such a beautiful character. Like, I think of him like an old friend. Like, I miss him so much. And but I thought a kind of interesting thing with the role that I got that I didn't want in Miss Fisher's play was something that I felt like I had already played a similar character before when I played the principal. So that's why I didn't want him.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing that, and I kind of had to swallow my excitement for being this other character, because I feel like it would have been so weird. I wanted to be this really athletic guy, the guy that Andy ended up playing, who was like, he's like, the athlete, and he came from like, what was it? He came from like practice after school when the fire hit.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I'm not athletic. That would be a stretch for me. Let me try it. And it would have been weird. So, and I did end up getting really into the character that I got. And so I had a lot of fun with debatably, it certainly wasn't my least favorite character I've ever played. And it was the only one that I didn't want. And it ended up being great.
Yeah. I always love it whenever I cast someone, and usually if they're smart, they're not gonna like throw a hissy fit. I've had kids throw a hissy fit at the part they got, and it's usually like, okay, well, I'll cast somebody else. I don't, like I said, negativity in other people is really a bummer for me. But if they're smart, if they're bummed that they got a part, they're gonna hide that from me. I don't want to know that. I don't. If you just accept the part or not, and then move on with your life. But I've had kids who are that they're gonna do the show because that's what they do. Theater is their thing, and they come in and they don't get the part they want, and a lot of times it's because it's with kids who may be like the best actor that we've got, maybe, and they could potentially play any of the parts. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I just hit my microphone. Sorry. They could potentially hit shocked me any. A little bit. Well, I was making a point with my hand.
Yeah. No, it really kind of emphasized the point, I think.
But you're really talented kids, like they're going to be versatile, and like, hey, you could play any of these parts. Mm-hmm. So should you just take the part that you expect you're going to get? I'd love to be able to give you this other part that's going to stretch you a little bit. It's going to be a little bit harder for you, and it's not going to be maybe as much stage time, but I like seeing kids do that. I like, and it's really nice to work somewhere where I've got enough talent that where I'm not like, okay, so I've got one person who can sing, their way out of a bucket. They're the only person who can play that part because nobody else can, hit that high note or whatever. Mm-hmm. We're really lucky to have lots of options. And so sometimes I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you could have played that part. You could have done a good job at that part, but I I wanted to stretch you, and I wanted to stretch this other person. This other person had never had a part like that, and so I want to stretch it. And so I like doing that. I had a former student, Richard Gomez, who's now at ACU, played the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. You know, we did Diary of Anne Frank, and he wanted Mr. Frank. He wanted the lead male character, but I cast him as Mr. Dussel, which is a smaller character and has a lot of, they're all on stage all the time, but it's less stage time, less. And he said he didn't tell me this, to my face, but he said at first he was a little upset, but that he found that character was actually the perfect part for him. That was exactly the right character he needed to play for himself and for the show. And I was like, it was one of those things. I was like, I'm glad you saw that. I'm glad you and if that's one thing I could tell like high school theater people, is that you're not going to get every part you want, but hopefully you get every part that you need and that the show needs.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing about that's the thing about like stuff like the underling character or even the man in chair character. They certainly didn't have the most lines out of anybody, but they were deeper characters than meets the eye. Like one read through, and you're not going to realize the depth that those characters had because they're not. I mean, the manager's there the whole time, but he only has like 2 or 3 long monologues, and then a couple like kind of. He's kind of like a mystery science theater character, basically. He's just kind of like making comments throughout it.
I've had there's lots of parts where you really need someone who can carry a show, even if they're not in every scene or they don't have the most amount of face time. One of those shows I directed, I directed Dracula at Cooper, and really strong actor. Didn't have a lot of guys come out for this show, and I really needed my strongest actor as Dracula. But he's not in a whole lot of the show. They're talking about him the whole time, but the characters with the most lines were pretty standard. Like you didn't have to have a whole lot of range, and so I had some younger actors who I wanted to give them a chance to be on stage. And they got these big roles because I just didn't have any guys come out for the show. It was like one of these shows where I was like, hey, I've got all these guys in the theater department, so I'm going to do this guy-heavy show. And then, like, a bunch of them didn't come out that I was kind of expecting to. But I had these younger, less experienced actors come out, and I was able to give them some significant roles, which was really good for them. But they weren't quite ready to handle the depth of Dracula. So I gave a more experienced person that role. I think that the man in chair is kind of like that. You need somebody who can like kind of tie it all together and can handle the weight of it, even though it's not on stage as often.
Okay, so I have 2 last questions before we close, and
okay,
this one's gonna seem really important. But what has been? It's gonna seem also really off topic. But what has been the most uniquely quarantine activity that has been your favorite? So like something that you like don't do in normal everyday life, and it took quarantine for you to do. For example, I've told my cousin, because I've been with my cousins this whole time. I said we feel like little kids again because we're like playing catch outside. And the other day we saw a snake in the grass. We were like looking at it, and we were like, we picked it up with a stick, and we were like Googling what kind it was and everything. So, anyways, what has been kind of have you had any kind of rediscovery of activities?
Well, I think certainly the Corona parody, writing that certainly would fit into that, but we've already talked about that. So let me think of something else that's even less inside my, and I can't really say doing the podcast because you and I have done this a few times, and then I've got a podcast that we're actually recording a new episode of our podcast tomorrow.
I've never done a Skype podcast though. You're the first online podcast.
Right. True. Same here. I'm gonna say maybe man, just staying in my house is a big one. Going to the park with my dog every single day, except for when the weather was bad. Shoot, that's a good question. I really wish I had a good like here's one thing answer, but I think just not the amount of inactivity that I've allowed myself, the amount of time where even in the summertime, I've got a lot of, as a teacher, I've got summers where I'm not working for long stretches. But even then I'll spend a lot of days going up to the school to get work done to prepare.
Right.
Or I usually have some kind of summer job, or we're going on vacation. So even that stuff isn't happening. You know what I will say? I'm smoking some ribs right now, which is something I need to. That's another reason I need to end the call pretty soon, is because I need to go check on them. But I like to cook, and I've always liked to cook. But like having time to like do long cooks, like a brisket that you're smoking, or ribs. I don't know. These are still kind of summertime activities for me. Cornhole.
That's a good one.
Cornhole.
That's a good one.
Cornhole. That's what I'm going to say.
So the very last question, the closing question, is kind of reverting back to the topic, but you can kind of pick one of the two, I guess. So the two that I'll throw out there that you could either put together or pick one or the other is, what do you think, like talking to the people out there who are listening, what do you think is the number one reason or a couple good reasons why you should try to be creative during this time, or what are your pieces of advice to stay creative during this time if you're having trouble?
So I think you need to, because I think you need to take care of your mental health. And I think that depression, this is my experience, it cultivates itself in inactivity. And so staying active, being creative is the way that I choose to stay active. But staying active is the best way in my experience to not allow myself to like get depressed or start going down unhealthy mental pathways, which I think everybody has the potential to do. I don't think that that's necessarily something that's only limited to certain people who have that tendency. I think it's something that can happen to anyone. So that's why I think you should be creative, or at least active.
Yeah.
At least active. And I think I think if you're being active, even if it's not artsy, it's creative. If you're starting, your online, business, that may not be artsy, but it's still creative. You have to be creative.
Or like keeping a journal or something, kind of just documenting your feelings about what's going on.
Absolutely.
I definitely think that's good for help.
Well,
I colored.
What was the next?
What was what?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I do not draw almost ever, but I colored. I'm actually kind of proud of the picture I drew, but I got bored the other day and I turned on some lo-fi because I have a friend who makes lo-fi beats all the time, and I'd never listened to him, so I started listening to him, and he's really good, by the way. Remedy Lo-Fi on Spotify if you're curious. But anyways, I was listening to it, and I just had my paper in front of me, and I just had some colors because I had to get colors for some lab that I had to do. So I just started coloring, and I just made this cool little picture, and I'm proud of it. It's I don't know, just that was the big thing I did that day, and I was proud of it.
I thought of a better answer for my uniquely quarantine.
Cornhole's pretty good, but go ahead.
Cornhole's pretty good, but I've written songs before, I've written music before, but it's usually been like kind of folky guitar based stuff. But I wrote a like an electronic dance song.
Oh yeah,
I'll send it. I'll send it to you after we're done here. I'll send it to you, and you can use it for our outro music.
Good, thank God. That's what I was thinking. I was like, we got to play it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I might could play it from here. Actually, do you want me to just try to play it here? Or do you want to?
It definitely won't be as good a quality. You should send it to me, and then I'll play it in the quality it deserves.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Anyways,
right.
yeah.
So anyway, I gotta go back to my screen. So anyway, the thing that I thought about was the. Shoot! I blocked it. Oh, that was it. So, but my the other thing I was gonna say. So, what's the next part of that question? Because I forgot.
The next part.
You said there were two
first
parts.
You were saying why it is important, and so the second thing is for people who are having trouble, either creatives or people who may have not found their creativity yet, or are just don't know what to do with all this time. And like me, I'm a classic overthinker. So when I sit and I don't do anything and my hands become idle, it's just like I just start overthinking everything, and I let this whole pandemic thing get into my head, and I start freaking out. Like, what are we going to do about this? So what is your advice to people who are having trouble just doing it and being creative?
Take up cornhole.
Take up cornhole.
Take up cornhole. Build yourself. I actually had my mom actually gave us a little plastic cornhole set that I think she bought at Academy or something. But build yourself a cornhole. Go to Lowe's and Home Depot are still open. Go buy the wood. It doesn't have to look good. It just has to have a hole. That's all it has to have.
Right.
So figure out how to build a cornhole thing, or go buy one if you can.
Probably get one on Amazon.
Academy is actually still open. Buy one on Amazon, and take up a cornhole, or dig a hole in the yard and throw corn in it. That's another way to do it. No, like just I would say.
Is that why it's called cornholes? There's supposed to be corn in those little hacky sacks.
In the backs, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And it goes in the hole. Cornhole. I think. I haven't researched the. No, I think something like that, doing something physical that is not creative, taking a walk. Like. But Forrest Gump got out of his house and started running for a very good reason. He was starting to feel trapped in that house. He had all these thoughts that were racing through his head, and he just needed to do something physical to kind of work that stuff out. And I think going outside and taking a walk, it's been really therapeutic for me to take my dog to the park every day. Doing something physical that's not creative, a lot of times I think will force you to stop thinking about, like if you're sitting there trying to be creative, it might never come. But if you get up and go walk or go play cornhole, doing something sort of mindless.
It's kind of ironic, but a lot of directors and writers call it couch time, where it's like, because you can't just sit in front of a computer and like it's not just gonna come to you whatever you're trying to write or work on. So they call it couch time because you kind of gotta like watch some TV or go on a walk or go do something and like be active, so your brain can. It needs material to work with. You can't just pull something out of nothing. You need to go do things and stimulate your brain to be able to then be creative.
I think that's why so many of your good ideas or anybody's good ideas come from taking a shower. It's something physical you're doing that has nothing to do with the thing you want.
Well, there's a second reason that the shower, typically good ideas come in the shower. Mostly it comes statistically for people who are about to go to bed, like right before they go to bed or right after they get up, because there's this
afternoon showers. That's another thing.
I'm gonna screw up this. Yeah, that's been my vibe lately. But I'm gonna screw up how to say this. But there's like this kind of consciousness state between complete consciousness and unconsciousness. It's like when you're groggy. Like, I don't know if you experience this, but a lot of people do. When you're falling asleep, I typically notice when I'm excited for something or I'm trying to fall asleep, like when it takes me a long time, like an hour or two, every time I'm like almost falling asleep, I'll get a great idea. And I'll be like, oh my God, I'm going to have to get out of this position and write it down, or like get up and get on my phone and get that screen. And so I'm torn because I'm like, this is a great idea and I don't want to forget this idea, and I will if I fall asleep. But I'm going to compromise my sleepiness by being alert enough to write it down. And a lot of ideas come to me in that way. And the same thing with being in the shower when you're kind of like half asleep and half awake, because that's when you start waking up or when you start winding down. And so it has to do with that active
think that's
thing,
why
but it also has to do with you kind of slipping between states.
That's why I need to when I need to turn my brain off, I'll turn on music or a podcast. Podcasts sometimes are actually even better because I'll set it. I don't want to let it run until it finishes, so I'll set the timer to stop at like 10 minutes. But thinking about the podcast helps me turn my own brain off.
Yeah.
Music doesn't always do that. Music, I can still usually think of what I want to, what I'm trying, whatever's going on during the day. Yeah. So that was it.
Yeah, good advice. Those were my my questions.
Did you ask me Jordan's question?
Let me bring that up real quick. I looked at it earlier. I have to word it correctly. He said, ask him about how much he loves Jordan Mathis. That's exactly what he said, word for word.
He's very genuine. He's got a positive attitude, and yeah.
So as
he's loud, he can be really really loud.
Yeah, definitely.
He'll like all of a sudden he'll just like get really excited about something like, and like, dude.
Yeah.
You gotta bring it down. Anyway.
All right.
I got ribs. I gotta go check on.
All right. So
I gotta go spritz them.
It's good to be creative. Go be creative. Take a shower. All right. Cool.
Go for a walk. Take your dog out. Cook some good food.
All right.
Slow cooked meat.
Hey, well, it was good having you on the podcast.
Thanks, man. This was fun.
Yeah.
This is always fun.
All right. Well, catch you later. Have a good one.
Peace.